Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and what and the right and wrong of police interactions. This episode covers Miranda rights, probable cause, and self-defense, and is brought to us by EWU Bodycam's channel. Be sure to check out the description below and give them the credit that they deserve. On March 28, 2022, officers with the Sunrise Police Department responded to several 911 calls alleging that TikToker Wyatt Yeager, more commonly known by his handle Icy Wyatt, had driven erratically and pistol whipped another motorist in a Chick-fil-A parking lot. The interactions that followed were captured on body camera.
So what happened?
This dude was parked in the middle of the road, like right at the light.
Okay.
To get back in the car, stop blocking traffic. You literally was at someone else's car, talking to them, banging on their window.
I think they called too.
Yeah, like,
woman in the car. That was like beating on the window.
I was like, come on, man, get back in the car, go about your day. He goes, oh, fuck you, this and that, I got a gun, all this. I'm like, okay, whatever. He cuts us off right here.
Okay.
He threw the drink at me, so I got out of the truck, obviously. Once I got out, he walks back into his car, he grabs his gun, points it at me.
Where they pointed it in my face.
I turned around just to leave, and right as I turn around, he's whacking in the back of the head.
I saw everything.
Okay.
I have a video. This was after he
After he hit him?
Yes. He was chasing them inside the parking lot like a crazy.
While the officers questioned the alleged victims, Mr. Yeager also called 911 about the situation.
I just pulled over because somebody tried to kill me in the car.
Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
This truck came up and tried to cut me off, so I pulled over to the next lane, and again, he's trying to swerve into my lane and tries to hit the car. So I stopped the vehicle, and he gets right in front of me. They stopped the car right in front of me, dead stop, so that I almost hit them, and they get out of the car like they're ready to fight. And then I had 4 guys jump out the car and say,
Did they hurt you, sir?
They did not hurt me because I had a gun.
No. Okay, and did you put the gun back in the case, or you still have it in your hand?
I just opened the glove box and I said, do you guys really want to with me right now?
Are you at your house right now?
No.
Okay, where are you? Can I come meet you?
When the lawyer comes home, I will have you come.
The officers then obtained Mr. Yeager's phone number and asked to meet with him, but Mr. Yeager refused to meet without a lawyer present. The officers eventually found Mr. Yeager as he was leaving his home and approached him with guns drawn.
Hey, put the car in park. Put the car in park. Let's go. Put it in park. All right. Put both your hands out the window.
Put your hands out the window.
I don't know who I am.
Nope.
Get out of the car. Keep your hands up. I can't take the seatbelt out. Take your seatbelt off and get out of the car. Do it now. Lay down on the ground.
I know my rights.
Get on the ground. Get on the ground or you're going to get tased. Get on the ground or you're going to get tased. Get on the ground. Get on the ground. Oh. Next time do what you're told. We won't have that problem.
No Miranda rights. No Miranda rights. Wow. No Miranda rights.
Mr. Yeager claims that the officers failed to read him his Miranda rights while placing him under arrest. In the landmark 1966 case of Miranda versus Arizona, the Supreme Court held that in a criminal trial, quote, the prosecution may not use statements, whether exculpatory or inculpatory, stemming from custodial interrogation of the defendant unless it demonstrates the use of procedural safeguards effective to secure the privilege against self-incrimination. The court outlined the required procedural safeguards, which have become commonly known as Miranda rights, as follows, quote, prior to any questioning, the person must be warned that he has a right to remain silent, that any statement he does make may be used as evidence against him, and that he has a right to the presence of an attorney, either retained or appointed. If he indicates that he wishes to consult with an attorney before speaking, there can be no questioning. Likewise, if the individual is alone and indicates in any manner that he does not wish to be interrogated, the police may not question him. However, it is important to note that the Miranda case only mandates that an individual to be informed of his rights before custodial interrogation, which the court defined as, quote, questioning initiated by law enforcement officers after a person has been taken into custody or otherwise deprived of his freedom of action in any significant way. And therefore, it does not necessarily require the reading of Miranda rights at the time of an arrest. Rather, as the Supreme Court concluded in the 1980 case of Rhode Island versus Innis, quote, Miranda safeguards come into play whenever a person in custody is subjected to either express questioning or its functional equivalent. That is to say, the term interrogation under Miranda refers not only to express questioning, but also to any words or actions on the part of the police that the police should know are reasonably likely to elicit an incriminating response from the suspect. Additionally, in the 1984 case of Berkemer versus McCarty, the Supreme Court held that although officers are not required to give Miranda warnings before engaging in roadside questioning of motorists who have been detained pursuant to routine traffic stops, an individual who was placed under arrest during a traffic stop was, quote, in custody at least as of the moment he was formally placed under arrest and instructed to get into the police car. And accordingly, his subsequent statements were not admissible in court because he was not read his Miranda rights before questioning. Therefore, although the officers were not technically required to read Mr. Yeager his Miranda rights at the same time as his arrest, if they questioned him without reminding him of his rights, any statements he made could most likely not be used against him in his criminal case.
Would you mind if we just look through it real quick? Are you allowing us to look through the car or no?
Yes!
Yes?
Okay.
Okay, we're going to do that then. Lock and open. Where's his keys? It looks like they're going to end up taking you to jail for the incident that happened with the road rage thing, because they said that there was a gun involved and they described the whole thing and the gun's there, and it seems like that's what happened. He said he got hit by a gun. There's a witness, unless you have something else to say about the incident.
I didn't hit nobody.
Well, they're saying otherwise, and they described the gun and everything, and there was somebody else that was watching.
So my girlfriend can't be a witness too?
Was she with you?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, we can talk to her when she gets here.
Babe, I'm getting arrested because of those people that cut me off. I pulled the gun out to show them through the window, and they all went back in their car. And they're talking about it's just for tonight. I can't go to jail tonight. I have to work. Like,
You are in absolutely no wrong. They should not
I'm
be
telling
holding
you.
I'll come trust and believe.
Go right out of it. I gotta call my mom. Goodbye. You can't take my phone. You can't take my phone. This is my possession. So now you're gonna be a thief?
You're under arrest. You're not allowed to have the phone, okay?
Wow.
Go back in the car.
I don't think you guys should be talking without me hearing. If it's about my matter.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Yes?
Can you roll down the window?
No. You don't have any right to hear what we're talking about.
You're talking about me, though. You don't see any problem with this. You don't see the problem that somebody with a bright pink car who is famous online gets with on the freeways all the time, and that's why I carry a gun. Show me the video proof where I hit him with a gun.
We don't need video proof.
Yes, you do, because I have several witnesses that will testify against.
Okay, then the court case should get dropped pretty quickly.
You have no proof.
Okay.
You don't even know what gun is the same gun that I hit with if I did. But you want to sit here and act like I'm the criminal?
Mr. Yeager argues that the officers cannot confiscate his phone, and later contends that they need video proof to arrest him because he has several witnesses that will testify to his side of the story. As the Supreme Court noted in the 2001 case of Atwater versus City of Lago Vista, during a custodial arrest, quote, the arrestee is subject to a full search of her person and confiscation of her possessions. Likewise, in the 2014 case of Riley versus California, the Supreme Court concluded that although officers may lawfully seize an individual's cell phone incident to arrest, they cannot search the contents of the phone without a warrant. Therefore, a court would almost certainly determine that the officers were within their authority to take Mr. Yeager's phone after he was placed under arrest. Further, it is also likely that a court would conclude that the officers had sufficient probable cause to arrest Mr. Yeager, even without video evidence of the alleged pistol whipping, and despite the fact that Mr. Yeager's version of events differs from the alleged victim's stories. In the 1963 case of Kerr versus California, the Supreme Court explained that, quote, the lawfulness of the arrest without warrant must be based upon probable cause, which exists where the facts and circumstances within the officer's knowledge and of which they had reasonably trustworthy information are sufficient in themselves themselves to warrant a man of reasonable caution in the belief that an offense has been or is being committed. Similarly, in the 2018 case of District of Columbia versus Westby, the Supreme Court stated that, quote, probable cause is not a high bar, and that, now quoting again, because probable cause deals with probabilities and depends on the totality of the circumstances, it is a fluid concept that is not readily, or even usefully, reduced to a neat set of legal rules. It requires only a probability or substantial chance of criminal activity, not an actual showing of such activity. In the Westby case, the court also clarified that, quote, probable cause does not require officers to rule out a suspect's innocent explanation for suspicious facts, and that the relevant inquiry, when confronted with a conflicting story from a suspect, is, quote, whether a reasonable officer could conclude, considering all of the surrounding circumstances, including the plausibility of the explanation itself, that there was a substantial chance of criminal activity. In this situation, as multiple witnesses testified that Mr. Yeager was the aggressor, and the officers observed a knot on the back of the victim's head from the alleged pistol whipping, it is likely that a court would determine that the officers had probable cause to arrest Mr. Yeager, despite Mr. Yeager's alternate explanation of the events that occurred.
No, we can't call your mom. Where are the keys inside the vehicle? Yes.
No. We're gonna stow it.
Tow it.
Oh, easy.
Tow it then.
Step inside.
Okay. Tow it then.
And you're detaining him for resisting or something?
No, he pistol whipped somebody with a gun over their head.
Oh, okay. That is the situation that nobody helped him with. I guess he called someone.
Yeah, he called 911, and then he went all the way back here instead of meeting with us.
Yes, he came home after being attacked by two hillbilly crazy people in a truck.
But he pistol whipped them over the top of their head.
Because they attacked him.
Well, that's why we're going to go back and take a seat.
Okay.
And if he wants to tell us the side of the story, then we'll see where we go from there.
Mr. Yeager's girlfriend, Mazing Usher, who's also known by the handle More Mazing, argues that Mr. Yeager only pistol whipped the other driver to defend himself from being attacked. Under normal circumstances, Mr. Yeager's alleged conduct in pointing his firearm at the other motorists would likely constitute aggravated assault in violation of Section 784.021 of the Florida statutes, which states that, quote, an aggravated assault is an assault with a deadly weapon without intent to kill, as Section 784.011 of the Florida statutes define an assault as, quote, an intentional, unlawful threat by word or act to do violence to the person of another, coupled with an apparent ability to do so, and doing some act which creates a well-founded fear in such other person that such violence is imminent. Likewise, the alleged pistol whipping would likely be considered an aggravated battery in violation of Section 784.045 of the Florida statutes, which states that, quote, a person commits aggravated battery who, in committing battery, uses a deadly weapon, as Section 784.03 of the Florida statutes explains, quote, the offense of battery occurs when a person actually and intentionally touches or strikes another person against the will of the other, or intentionally causes bodily harm to another person. And in the 2013 case of O'Meara versus State, the 4th District Court of Appeal of Florida determined that, quote, when a person commits a battery by using a firearm as a bludgeon, the person uses a deadly weapon within the meaning of the aggravated battery statute. However, if, as Ms. Usher contends, Mr. Yeager pointed his firearm or pistol whipped the other motorist to thwart an attack, under Florida law, he may potentially be able to avoid conviction or even prosecution by arguing that he was acting in self-defense. Section 776.012 of the Florida statute states that, quote, a person is justified in using or threatening to use force, except deadly force, against another when and to the extent that the person reasonably believes that such conduct is necessary to defend himself against the other's imminent use of unlawful force. Likewise, the statute also establishes that, quote, a person is justified in threatening to use deadly force if he reasonably believes that using or threatening to use such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself, or to prevent the imminent commission of a forcible felony. In this situation, it is challenging to predict whether Mr. Yeager would be able to succeed in a self-defense claim, as the application of Florida self-defense laws requires highly fact-specific and nuanced analysis, and the circumstances surrounding the altercation between Mr. Yeager and the other motorists are disputed. However, Mr. Yeager's credibility is certainly questionable, as he claimed in his 911 call that he merely opened his vehicle's glove box to show the other motorists the firearm, then later claimed to have only pulled the gun out, while Ms. Usher seemed to admit that Mr. Yeager had used the firearm as a bludgeon during the encounter.
Okay. So what are you trying to do so for? Just like defend the hillbillies who got punched in the face with a gun?
Well, if they got pistol whipped with a gun, then they're victims.
Okay.
Yes, we are going to...
And he's a victim of being attacked while driving. They were speeding in front of him. So you guys not aware of like the full story?
We heard that there was some kind of a road rage incident that started it, but...
I was aware that like multiple people hung up on his call when trying to call for assistance from these crazy drivers.
I called him myself, actually.
Oh yeah, we heard you on the phone trying to like find his home to just like show up. Wonderful.
Well, to talk to him about what happened.
Okay. So I'll just follow you guys and see you there. Thank you.
Mr. Yeager was held in jail overnight and was released on bond after a court hearing the next day. Mr. Yeager was charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon without intent to kill, 1 count of aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, 1 count of battery on an officer, and 1 count of resisting or obstructing without violence. Mr. Yeager pleaded not guilty to all 5 counts, and as of the date of writing this episode, the charges are still pending. On March 31st, 2022, Mr. Yeager claimed on Twitter that, quote, Sunrise County Police in Broward County ambushed me in my neighborhood hours after I had called for help in road rage incident earlier in the day. They didn't send anyone to help me, but came to my house hours later and helped me at gunpoint. This is not okay. The same day, Mr. Yeager claimed in another, now deleted, Twitter post that he did not batter a police officer, alleging instead that the officers, quote, ripped my phone out of my hand and called it battery. Mr. Yeager also posted several TikTok videos about the incident, but his TikTok account has since been removed from the platform. Overall, the Sunrise officers get a C+, because although there are instances where individual officers behaved professionally, some of the officers engaged in antagonistic dialogue with Mr. Yeager, such as the officer who referred to him as the Tiger King, and other officers used levels of force which were unnecessary for the situation. For instance, one of the officers threw Mr. Yeager into the ground when he had failed to lie down flat after being ordered to get on the ground, causing visible injuries to his face. Later, an officer slammed Mr. Yeager into the side of a police cruiser after he moved his arms during handcuffing and told the officer to quote-unquote shut up. Although courts have found similar levels of force to be constitutional, in each of these instances, the officer's objectives could likely have been achieved through lower levels of force that were less painful to Mr. Yeager, and the officers seem to be at least partially motivated by retaliation against Mr. Yeager for his disrespectful conduct. Additionally, the officer who transported Mr. Yeager asked him several questions about the altercation, which, absent the administration of Miranda warnings, could have rendered his statements inadmissible in court. While the Supreme Court has determined that the failure to read Miranda rights before an interrogation does not necessarily constitute a violation of the Constitution, best practices would require the officers to have Mirandized Mr. Yeager before asking him any questions. Mr. Yeager gets an F for engaging in volatile and disrespectful speech and conduct throughout the encounter, failing to exercise his right to remain silent, and seemingly implying that his status as a TikTok personality should have any bearing on the way he was treated by law enforcement. Further, although there does not seem to be video evidence of the alleged altercation in the Chick-fil-A parking lot, there is video footage showing Mr. Yeager operating his vehicle at an excessive speed and driving around a pickup truck at a stop sign. And while Mr. Yeager is certainly entitled to his day in court, the fact that he changed his story multiple times and did not call 911 until the officers had already responded to the scene, combined with his demeanor throughout his arrest and various other factors, lead me to believe that there may be at least some merit to allegations against him in the road rage incident. Let us know if there is an interaction or legal topic that you would like us to discuss in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out my second channel for even more police interaction content.